Right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Game Set Live. I hope everybody's doing good today on Wednesday, the hump day. Got a great guest for you. Hey, Monkey Punch in the chat. Shout out to you, brother. You may notice that Mr. Bushido is not here. He is having coughing fits and really didn't think it would be a good day for him to do a show or to give his audio to the show. And Power Man has got a sick and screaming child. And, I know most of us have been there, and we wish both of them the best and hope that them and their loved ones get well as soon as possible.
By the way, if you are interested in being part of a podcast, we got two new sports available right now. So yeah, do make sure them to send your resumes.
Fabio, that's cutthroat, brother. We don't do that here.
No, we don't. You sure?
Yeah, I'm positive.
We'll talk
We
later.
do
We'll talk later. No
we do
worries.
have another fill in that is going to. We got a fill in coming. If you are familiar with Hard Geek Chani, he is doing Boom Show right now, and after he does that and takes a break, he will be joining us. And looking forward to that. It's always a good time with Chani. All right. First and foremost, uh, Mr. Fabio, sir,
Yes,
what did you play this past weekend? What have you been playing, and how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Just a bit stressed from college, especially because I'm doing my final paper. And yeah, things are going great, but the damn. So some calculations are not working out at the moment, but I'll figure something out. No worries. And about what I played during this week, well, I played Destiny 2. I still don't care about story. I like the gameplay. I still don't care about story. I'm still waiting for the moment where the story actually makes me care for something. I am playing. Yes, I can't believe I'm saying this. I am playing Fallout 76. Wasn't expecting that, but yeah, I'm playing it. I played a bit of Madden as well, and I'm about to go back to Halo Infinite because they've just released two brand new modes. Social Slayer with which is like the Yappening event that we had with some simple crazy modes, but on the Slayer playlist and ranked free for all. So yeah, and
Hmm.
the best part is those are social modes. It's more about playing with your friends. They didn't hype it up. They just said, okay, here it is. New modes. And people are way more happy this way. You see? That's a step to the right direction.
Yeah, still on that Halo boat, aren't you?
I like to play Halo. That's the thing.
I do too. I enjoy it with friends, but so I'm always down for a community game night when there's a Halo night going on. I'm always there. But as far as getting on and playing multiplayer with randoms, I can't
Hmm.
do it right now.
Happens.
So yeah, it is what it is. Maybe I'll be enticed as soon as Forge is up and we get some really crazy new maps that apparently the community has to come up with because 343 can't come up with them. Yeah, I digress. I'm not gonna. To our guest, Agent
he,
Deli,
he
Agent
doesn't speak
Die.
much. He doesn't speak much.
No.
Oh,
Hello, hello, welcome. Thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm very excited. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. When I was reached out to, I was like, oh my god, this is exciting. I haven't been on anything in quite some time, so it was just nice to be able to be thought of, and of course being able to give the opportunity to speak to everybody. It's always lovely to be able to speak to gamers, consumers, and just other people alike that just share the hobby and stuff like that. So yeah.
But by the way, Mr. Dali, Mr. Dai, please tell us who you are, where you work. What do you do?
Hello, my name is Deli, or Dai. That's I go by Agent Deli on the internet, and I am a former AAA game developer, formerly at Ubisoft. I did the level design on a game that's familiar to some of you guys. You guys may have played. It's a small little indie game called Watch Dogs Legion, and yeah, we shipped
No,
that pretty recently. Oh man, check it out when you get a chance, man. It's on sale.
man, like
It's
I don't
on
know.
it's on screen right now.
You should,
I mean,
but
what?
don't explain the joke, please.
Yeah. All right. I was simping for the game that the developer worked on. Okay, that's what I did.
It's a cool game, if you haven't played it, check it out. It's on sale. I can gift you a copy if you'd like.
Please do so. I will really appreciate it. On
So, Agent
Xbox.
Die, what have you been playing? What kind of games are you into?
Let's see. I've been playing a bunch of games recently. Like, let's see. I finished the Quarry. I've been playing a lot of Tekken 7 ranked online. And then I finished Saints Row 2022 recently. And then I played the beta for Modern Warfare 2 recently as well too. And I have that coming in the mail here on the 28th of this month. So yeah, those are the games. Those are the last couple games that I've been playing. I play a lot of CS:GO, and then of course Halo Infinite as well too. I mostly play ranked on Halo Infinite though, and then I've been playing Need for Speed Heat last week. I put about 20 or 30 hours into Need for Speed Heat.
I do like my one of my favorite games of all time was Need for Speed Most Wanted. From the story to the racing, everything. Most Wanted in my eyes will always be
Well,
the
the
best.
new Most Wanted or the old Most Wanted? The PS2, Xbox Most Wanted.
Y-
I'm
yes,
assuming.
that one. That one. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the good. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yep. The BMW M5 that gets sabotaged in the beginning.
Hmm.
And then when you finally get that car back, you're like, this thing is so slow. I want to get back to what I was driving.
Yeah,
Ah,
I think my favorite is Underground. I think personally,
Underground was good. Yeah.
spent a lot of time playing that on the PS2, so just a huge fan of it. One of the first few racing games that I played when I got to the States. So
All right. Well, give give my pitch. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Thember, Infinite Umbra, Mr. Bushido showing up in the chat. Palpatine. All right. Let's get into our first topic. Our first topic is Scorn Friday. You guys looking forward to Scorn? What do you think of it? Is it just going to be? Is it? Some people are calling it a walking simulator. To me, I don't. To me, it looks like if Doom Guy had a nightmare, that Scorn would be his nightmare.
A
Is
hmm.
what it
walking
seems to me.
Wait a second. A walking simulator? Is that the impression people are having? Seriously?
I've seen it called a walking simulator on Twitter. Yes.
Okay, like okay, maybe it's because the gameplay that we saw didn't have much of the combat, didn't have much of the scary part of it. It was most about grotesque and disgusting visuals that would make you feel agonized by just looking at it, and not much shooting. But like, I don't think it's necessarily a game that has that much walking as Death Stranding. That game, I think, is more suitable for a walking simulator, to be honest.
Yeah, Death
But not,
Stranding.
not saying that is a bad thing. Not saying that is a bad thing. I would love to play Death Stranding, but while listening to a podcast, or listening to music or something like that. You know what I mean? But I don't think that Scorn is the right type of game to call as a walking simulator, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll see. We only
You
got a
dis-
couple days to wait.
Wait a second. Are you disappointed? Are you starting to think that it is a walking simulator?
No, no. I just think it's funny that it's being called that.
I think people throw that out way too often. I'm excited for it. I look forward to it. I'm always excited for horror games, and then two, I'm always excited to see where the genre goes and what's happening. I mean, I think we're gonna um I think we're spoiled this winter time. I mean, we have Callisto Protocol. Obviously, we
Uh-huh.
have Scorn coming out soon on Friday.
Yes.
Then we have the Dead Space remake as well coming on
Yes.
up. I think it's very interesting to see Dead Space remake, the original, such an industry pusher, such a fantastic video game, such a a standard setter, and then versus something that is competing with the original IP, something that I'm assuming the developers wanted to create in the beginning from the start. So being able to see those two side to side is going to be very very cool for me to be able to kind of digest like what they've learned, the core team has learned over the last 15 years, 15 or how many so years developing games. But also on the other side of things, Scorn, I'm interested to see if puzzles, and other FPS elements have heightened the genre as well too, because I think recently it's been getting kind of stale. I mean, I really enjoyed Resident Evil 8, but I think personally Resident Evil 7 did things a little bit better. Resident Evil 8 felt like it had a identity crisis about halfway through the game, and I understand that that's something to what's it called, to kind of mitigate the issues when it comes to actually selling the video game, because you never want to make a game that's too scary. That's a problem inside horror segments and just stuff that is always going on inside the industry. Is that like how scary is too scary? And if you make a game too scary, we had that same issue with what's it called? We had that same issue with Evil Within, and then we saw that conversely with Dead Space 2, and then going into Dead Space 3. If you make a game that's too scary, people won't buy it.
Uh-huh.
So you have to make a game that's kind of in between, that has light elements, that has shooter elements, has stuff that be able to kind of incentivize players to go forward. And I think that that's something that Evil Within 2 kind of basically turned into a third-person shooter action RPG kind of game, and less so much like a horror game like the original. And I think I'm excited to see if Scorn stays true and continues with the raw visuals and the puzzle elements and everything like that, and sees if it actually sticks through its through line throughout the entirety of the game, rather than and then change halfway through or whatever it may be, or kind of satisfy the player base halfway through the game. So I'm excited. And then of course my impressions may be up Friday or Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. After that, like,
We have just been joined by Mr. Hargeet Johnny himself.
how are you doing, Hargate? Hey, okay,
You
short
feeling a
talk.
little bit of
That good one. Awesome.
you feeling a little bit of podcast jet lag there.
Yeah, no, sorry. Were you expecting me to say something? Just thought it was 11.
Okay, your audio is a bit cut.
It
Stuff
is?
like that.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Let's see. How's it?
It's a little.
A bit. Still technical issues going on.
Go ahead.
Talk again.
Say again.
Hello?
Yeah, still some technical issues. Sorry.
Is your audio input set to the correct in your settings?
I would assume so, but I'll check again. Hold on.
There we go. Now it's
never
better.
mind.
Hey,
Good now.
hello.
There we go. How are you doing,
All
Hargate?
right.
Go on.
Okay.
Awesome.
So,
All right.
But
Hargeet,
like,
Yo,
how you been doing?
good enough, I guess.
Been doing good?
Yeah. Just got a
good enough, I
podcast, and now I'm jumping into this one.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. We've got a sick panelist, and we've got a panelist with a sick child, and family comes first, and your well-being comes first. I understand that. Are you looking forward to Scorn this weekend?
I'm gonna play it. It's getting Game Pass. I play pretty much everything that comes to Game Pass, assuming I get the time to play them. I have so many games to play. But yeah, I think it comes out right as the next set of games leave, right? So there was one game left that it was The Good Life or something like that that I haven't finished yet. So I'm gonna concentrate on that to get that done before it leaves Game Pass, and then I'll play whatever's next. But yeah, I'll definitely try it. Why not? It seems like it's a short game, right? So
Yeah, Xbox put out a tweet detailing, not really detailing, but showing all the games released to October. And I replied to him. I said, I haven't finished my old backlog yet, and I guess my new backlog starts now because I'm an avid golfer and I'm looking forward to PGA 2K23. I get to play that Friday too. Yeah, backlog starts now. Definitely. Well, you know,
One thing that I just would like to
yes.
go back with that list point argument, that going back especially with Resident Evil 8, could we actually consider that Resident Evil 8 had an identity crisis during the game? Because I think that Resident Evil 8 was a game that, okay, they were saying that we need to continue the story
Mhm.
that we started on 7, but we want to test the waters to see how good people will react so we can make a Resident Evil 4 remake, because that's the
Hmm.
main idea that they had. You can clearly see how identical it is, but one is a third person, the other one is first person.
Well, I guess you can, what's it called? I guess you can rebuke that fact by saying like Resident Evil doesn't have an identity crisis because Resident Evil 8 is very like template Resident Evil. It's very, corny in some segments. It's very so much action oriented towards the latter half, and that's something that we've seen throughout the Resident Evil games in the past. But I think that as a soft rebooting a franchise from 7 to 8, since we hadn't seen it in like 5 or 6 years at that time, I think that that new direction that they were moving. I think that they should have definitely stuck with it and stayed consistent. Personal opinion, anyways. But I understand that as Resident Evil fans and Resident Evil franchise in general, you really necessarily can't go too far into one direction, or else you will fail to adopt new fans and then fail to appease old fans as well too. So I think that they struck like a nice fair middle ground with 8. I mean, by no means am I upset with the game at all. That's a personal gripe, but I mean, I enjoyed the game. I bought it, so yeah.
Yeah, I do understand. I was just really curious about this comment because, like, could we consider something like an identity crisis when it is mostly just making a test for something else? Like, that's just the main idea that I had
Mhm.
right now in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I only consider it having an identity crisis because it's as if the game swapped hands
Mhm.
halfway through the game. The levels are different, the design language is different,
For sure.
combat sections are different. It's almost as if the game just drastically changed and or was rushed or just had like a different design philosophy going into the second half. Second
For sure.
half, especially going into the third house, and fighting Moreau, and then past Castle Dimitrescu, and then I can't remember her name, the lady with the dolls,
Yep.
in the second house. So yeah, I think that there was something that there was a lot of sign postage. There was a lot of level designs. There's a lot of things that I recognize inside the game, and some of the stuff that we even use inside Watch Dogs Legions when we were discussing that inside the studio. Some of that sign postage and level design language is very stark, and I recognize that kind of language, like pathways, hard angles, being able to see windows and doors from various points in the house, stuff that being able to kind of what's it called, motivate exploration, and we
Mhm.
lose that going into the factory, we lose that going into Moreau because it was very so much hallway room, and
Mhm.
action sequences that are majority wave based, right? Like when we were in Castle Dimitrescu, you had new sections guided by one or two new enemies, right? Three by the max,
Mhm.
and then a boss battle every now and then to break up the silence. And then Dimitrescu was always stalking around. But when we got to Moreau, it was as if we were fighting 8, 9, 10. And again, that as a level designer, if you guys aren't familiar with what we do, we help guide the player. We place the combat sections. So all those enemies that they place, that's something that a level designer does.
Mhm.
Um, and then of course we build the level, we build the layout, and then the environmental artists come in and then they texture the ground and place the rocks and stuff like that. But we block out the overall level, and we make sure that it's very clear, concise, and players will be able to flow through properly, and also it's able to hit all the narrative beats that's whatever is currently hitting. So if we're talking to a narrative designer and they say, hey, Ethan's got to do this here because he did this 2 chapters ago, so this has to happen, or this has to be something that reoccurs inside the level, and that kind of feedback is missing in the latter half. A lot of puzzle elements, stuff to do with his hands. Obviously, that's obviously explained away and X and Y and this and that, and there's a narrative reason for that. So that's why we don't really see that kind of stuff reoccurring in the latter half. But it's as if the first half of the game is designed by somebody else, is designed by a team that has a different design philosophy. So yeah, just using those combat sections as a stark example, that the first two levels, the first two bosses, or dungeons, you can call them, of the first of that first half of the game are designed miraculously different than the latter half. Just even the combat sections as well too, right? Leading up to that kind of stuff, and then of course when you fight the werewolves and that big guy, it's again, it's as if they turned this into a first person shooter game. So yeah.
Now, Dai, would you say that is something that you may be more prone to run into if you've contracted out a lot of different firms to work on a game, like we saw with Halo Infinite? There were so many different outside sources that helped build that game. But I'm not sure if they did that with Resident Evil 8. I'm pretty sure that was just all
I'm
them.
pretty positive it was all them. Well, when decisions like that come down to the wire, I mean, you really have to make decisions based on whatever serves the game. So if narratively they've written an entire game that has Ethan doing this and that and turning into a badass and having a discovery in the last half of the game, you kind of have to abide by that, right? Like you can't just constantly come in and rewrite things. You either have to you have to double down on it, which they obviously did, or you have to spend a little time and compromise. It's a push and a pull. It's a team environment. You have to develop things everything is developed like in tandem. So like you can't just have somebody come up to you and say like, "Hey, Bob, like, that stuff that you've been working on the last 6 months, scrap it." Which has happened to me. Like I've worked on something for 3 or 4 months for this game here on on screen, and then they came up and say, "Hey, we can't have that in the game. Let's scrap it. Let's redo this." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Now I have to start from square one again." And doing that, with contractors, with outside employees, or just with anything, is a very difficult decision to make. So as a producer, as a game director, as a creative director, or whatever it may be, as a studio, you kind of have to push and pull and say like, is this going to push us off schedule? Is this what it's going to do? So yeah, like I don't think that they had many contractors on the game. But I think that it was something that they've always intended or designed the game to be that specific way, to be very Resident Evil. But I was just personally disappointed because I felt like they really could have done more. And it felt like the first half of the game was a shining example of what Resident Evil could achieve with this new formula going into the next decade. And I felt like they played it a little safe. So
Yeah. I was kind of taken back when I played the Resident Evil 8 demo,
mhm.
because I loved 7. 7 gave me that whole, show my age here. One of my favorite movies of all time. It gave me that people under the stairs vibe.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, you're sneaking around in this house, and it's got it. It was paced so well and done masterfully. Being chased around by the guy and by the crazy old lady, and then H was just like, I played that demo and I thought, how did we get here?
Mhm.
And are they trying to be something else? And you're right, they may have been trying something out. Um, like Fabio said, maybe we know of 4 remakes coming, possibly. So I know I won't hear the
Sorry to
end of it
derail.
if I,
Sorry to derail the stream talking about Resident Evil 8, but yeah. And also,
yeah,
it's Hargeet, right?
Yes, yeah.
Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Hello, my
Nice to meet
name
you as
is
well.
Dai, or you can call me Deli.
Okay.
So it's nice to meet you and nice to have you on the panel.
um, I won't hear the end of it if I don't ask this question for Mr. Bushido. Bushido would like to hear a development horror story.
Uh, okay. Hopefully I'll be able to tell him something that he hasn't heard before. I'll give you, Bushido, I'll give you a BOGO, right? If you haven't heard this one before, I'll give you a second one. So the first one we had, this was about 2 weeks before our E3 premiere. Big E3 demo coming out for Watch Dogs Legion. We had I'm not gonna call him intern, but we had a junior developer tasked for something, and then that junior developer ended up pasting a photo of the Beatles while they were younger on a wall in an alleyway, just super innocuous. Nobody's gonna see this. It just needed that, it just basically it was an empty JPEG file, and they needed to put something on the wall so that we can push this out for E3. And like I said, the players, journalists are gonna play it, blah blah. Nobody's gonna see this, right? So while we were doing playtests and we were giving them the sheet of all the assets going on and stuff like that, they were, legal, and everybody was going through and double checking to make sure that everything was set. All the JPEGs were, met legal standard and stuff like that. And here, and lo and behold, they find this little tiny picture behind a dumpster, and they're like, "We can't use that." And they were like, "What?" And they were like, "We cannot use that. That is the photo of the Beatles. Do you know who that is?" They were like, "Find whoever put this in here and talk to them about it." And so I was tasked to go find this person and give him a stern talking to, because that right there, if we put that out, that could have potentially been a huge legal trouble. So then and there, that stopped the demo dead in its tracks, and was like, we can't, we're like 1 week away from E3. Like we don't have anything available at the moment right now. We've been working on this, so we have to stop. So find this person, replace this JPEG, make a new build, or whatever, and make sure that it's, we have an alpha and a Bravo copy to make sure that if one goes down, then we all have another one available on standby on a pen drive. So now I had to go talk to this person and ask him why the hell he did that and blah blah. It was a mess. I'm not gonna lie. It was a mess. There were definitely a lot of people breathing down my neck and other people's necks, and a lot of emails going on left and right. So yeah, little things like that could derail an entire game, and you'll never hear about that kind of stuff because obviously we don't want to talk about it. But it's always interesting to look back and find, like, oh, you're in the hallway, you're in that. Oh, you remember that? Remember when this happened? So yeah, it was very interesting to see, the E3 demo that the people played. Has that kind of history towards it. And then the second horror story that we had was, I had this moment in the game again, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. This is a personal horror story. I had worked on something that probably about 3 or 4 months now, worked on a level, and there was something that wasn't working properly. It was like what's it called? There was a ledge, and when you climb that ledge, it would just it was like there was 2 assets put into it, and there was a line of code that was interacting improperly, and then the animation would just play over. The mantling animation would just play over and over and over and over again. So you couldn't actually get up over this ledge. And so I didn't know about it. QA didn't catch it. They didn't send it in to me. I didn't get an email on Jira or Slack or anything like that, and was like, "Hey, can you open this?" There was no ticket. So I didn't know any of this stuff. So I sent it into a senior member, and because we were doing company testing. So I sent it over to a senior member that worked on the Snowdrop engine over there by the division. And he was playing it because we were doing open world testing. So I was like, "Oh, test this out for me, please. Give me your feedback." And he was like, "All right, well, if you give me this, I'm going to give you real feedback, not like BS feedback." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready for it." That man railed into me. That man was like, "Dude, this thing is trash. Scrap it. This level sucks. It is hot dog water." He basically told me that I didn't know what I was doing, and that it was like, "Did you even go to school?" He was like, "Thank God that your bangs hide your lobotomy scars." Like, it was ridiculous, bro. Like they were going crazy. But then he explained to me what was happening. He was explaining to me that, like, the golden path at Ubisoft is what we learned is much different than the golden path elsewhere, right? And then I talked to some of my other developer friends across the industry. So the golden path refers to, most people refer to as like the main missions or side content, or basically like where you have to go, to be able to progress the story. And so my friends at Insomniac only use the golden path. When they talk about the golden path, they only use it as the main story only. So, from wherever you're standing to the main story, that's the golden path. And then from story mission to story mission, that's the golden path. But here at Ubisoft, because we're open world, because we've been doing things a little bit differently, and because our design philosophy is a lot different, the golden path is something that we design as wherever you decide to start the mission at, where you need to be inside that mission. So let's say, Bob, you're playing this mission right here, and you pull up onto the laboratory, right? Where that spider robot that you control needs to be in direct view of where you start your mission, so that you know that you have to get there to proceed to the next moment. Or let's say you start here and you need to get to a certain window to be able to hack a computer. Wherever you start, no matter if it's, point A, point B, or point C, you need to be able to see that window. You need to be able to see that balcony. And that is a completely different design philosophy than something like, Insomniac or Naughty Dog, where they just talk about story mission. This is moment to moment. This kind of design philosophy reflects basically how anybody would play the game. And it's doubly or triply hard because we have so many play styles. We have the aggressive play style, we have the ghost play style that's a mix of both. We have like the hacker play style that's just, you go around a corner and you hack your way in, you don't even have to move. So placing those cameras, placing those enemies, placing a dumpster even, we have to be able to make sure that a player of any caliber, all of us here, us four, because I'm sure we would all four play the game way differently from each other, has to be able to recognize that they need to be there, and they need to do that. They need to be there in order to progress that mission. So yeah, that senior developer, over there, they basically was like, scrap this thing is garbage. And he explained to me why it was garbage. He said, this stuff is unclear, this dumpster is too high, this lane, this alleyway has too many steps, right? Because steps we want to keep from anywhere between 5 to 7, right? So be able to visually see like there's an elevation change. If you have 22 steps, people are going to be like, I don't want to go up those stairs. I don't know why. It's like a psychological thing. People just avoid that kind of stuff. They'll say, we'll come back, right? They want to explore stuff that they are able to actually see. So if some stairs are in this game, or 5 to 7 steps, they're able to easily see over that and say, oh, that's another alleyway. Oh, that's a potential area I need to be. Oh, there are enemies over there, so I should avoid this, set of stairs. And that, again, that kind of design philosophy is very different from the rest of the industry. So when he was explaining to me this and that, and this dumpster is too high because we need stuff, how would a player know to be able to mantle things if something is 2 meters or 3 meters high? In order to be able to mantle something in the game, or everything in the game, needs to be chest level or eye level, either or, and then or a little bit over the head. That way, a player subconsciously knows, I can mantle that object right there. And that's something, again, that you guys will never know or never really recognize until you have these kind of conversations, or you work in this kind of area where somebody who's been working here, mind you, he's been working in the industry like 15, 20 years, right? At that time, I had been working in the industry maybe 2 years, right? A year and a half or some change like that. I didn't know what I was doing. And he broke it down and explained to me, like, there are so many decisions that you have to make. So yeah, I'm very thankful for his advice. I'm very thankful for his breakdown, but I think he could have been nicer in the beginning.
Now, is that golden rule coming to? Is it more important in an open world game?
We have a design philosophy that goes into our open world games. But yeah, that stuff I think rings doubly true for open world games, because you have freedom, you have player freedom, right? You don't have player agency like in a linear game where it's like, you have to go this way. You have to explore this area, right? Like in standard linear games, like, I don't know, Gears of War. Everybody's played Gears of War, right? Or Halo. In standard linear games, that if you get down to this control panel and you hit this, you're going to move to the next stage, and that you don't have time to explore. So you're going to be like, I won't hit that because I want to explore. I want to go backwards, right? Because there's a, what's it going to be called? There's normally a point of no return. But in open world games, there's normally isn't, right? And we see this in a lot of open world games where you'll complete the main mission and then it'll be like, and it'll put you right back into the game after you finish it, and then you can just keep going because they want you to explore. So we have to be able to keeping a conscious mind on how a player or any player is going to play, and how any player is going to explore or incentivize any player, right? So to me, I think that is it rings doubly true for open world games.
You had a question, Fabio, before I
Like
butted in
no, no,
like a jackass?
no, no, not at all. Like I just wanna say, should we really go with topics? Should we really have topics? I just wanna hear him talk. To be honest,
Uh,
like
well,
I'm learning so much right now. I'm really
okay,
enjoying
well,
this.
well, okay, well, we are going to hop into a topic right here. It's something
Ah,
I know will make me happy. Me and Deli, we talked about this in the green room before the show. Um, so there are new features and experiences being brought to alpha participants with in the update, the Xbox update preview program, and that is going to be centered towards the DVR. The DVR, they are going to raise the bit rate by 30% for 720 and 1080p captures.
mm.
It's about damn time they did something with the DVR. Is it going to fix the HD transition to capture where everything looks really dark or whatnot? And I believe Deli was even telling me that was with his Elgato, it's HD compatible, and even there they still come out looking too dark. So, but I mean, I guess it's a step in the right direction. I think.
I
I don't
think
know.
so. I think the DVR is something that a lot of people have been complaining about in the past, and audiences love the DVR, right? I mean, look at the PlayStation folk. That you always see something on Twitter hashtag PlayStation Share or PS5 Share. There's Share Factory. There's other things, right? And people are always looking to share gameplay and interact with other people online. And I think that this kind of golden age of media transitions now we have completely accessible to anybody. So Fabio, living in Brazil, is able to see my gameplay that I put on Twitter, and we've never talked before. You know what I mean? Hargeet is like surfing around for the newest tips and tricks, and he's runs across your video, Bob, where you're like, hey, this ledge is bugged, so you can't get this achievement at the moment right now. And so now he has learned something new, and again, we're in this golden digital age of information sharing. So I think that 30% bump is going to be good for the DVR. And so yeah, the DVR right now is actually really, really low on the bit rate. The Xbox DVR is like something around like 4,000, 6,000. And I think for like standard HD, you need anywhere between 12 to 14. So yeah, and as for the HDR option, as long as they put in the option to turn HDR capture off, it's on by default. But if you have the ability to actually, select the little checkbox and say, hey, please turn this off, then we should be able to get standard gameplay, because that transition between looking at HDR content on non-HDR screens is still something that we haven't figured out inside the industry yet.
Yeah. Um. I brought this up on Twitter a while back, and this is why I think it's taken so long for them to address the DVR, because so the only ones that are really complaining about the DVR are content creators like us. But at the same time, we all have these nice PCs with nice capture cards, and we
What?
may complain.
We
We
all
may
have?
well. You know, so what we may complain one
What?
direction, we may complain in one direction, and then the other direction, what we're showing is not reflecting what we're complaining. So I tried to start a movement on Twitter where I told everybody, stop using your capture cards and only use console captures. And eventually they'll get tired of everything out there looking like crap, and they'll fix it. And that didn't go over very well. I didn't get very many followers on that one. So.
Wait a second. Was that your main objective, to gain followers?
No, not followers on my profile. Followers on the movement of putting out
There we go.
only using the console's DVR.
There
You
we go.
know, putting a spotlight on that black eye per se.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I know if I had DVR access like this, 10, 12 years, 20, 10, 15 years ago, I probably would be a content creator myself, instead of a game developer. So it's always interesting because, being able to interact with people and share your content and stuff like that. It's always fun to be able to talk about and share your experiences and talk about things. And I probably would have found out a dozen different things in the meantime with the DVR, but obviously we didn't have DVR for quite some time, and then the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One came out and we did, and it was, we had already had the big boom of content creation on YouTube, in 2012 to 2014 or 2010 to 2014, right? And then that only bolstered the fact because there are many streamers out there that stream strictly off of their PlayStation and their Xbox. So yeah, I think it's a valuable asset, and I don't think it'll ever go away. But I do think that there needs to be more people who kind of use that so that we can kind of bump those numbers up, so that these companies see like, oh, 80% of the people who are recording gameplay record using the DVR, or 80% of the people, X amount of content creators are using DVR, X amount of streamers are using DVR only, X amount of commentary channels are recording strictly and ripping straight from the DVR. So yeah.
Now, I'm curious, if you Twitch directly from your console, is it a better quality or is it strictly DVR quality?
It has DVR quality for 720 and 1080p. So it is quite good. It just hitches off of whatever your what's it called? Whatever functions that your DVR is using. And it only takes about 2 cores to encode and stream that kind of stuff. And you can obviously change the individual bit rate, not the individual, but there are presets for was it like 480, 900, 720p and 1080p standard and HD, with various amount of bitrate adjustments there too. So you can do like 720p normal, or you can do like 720p high or whatever it may be. So yeah, it is cool. It is awesome, and I think that it's fantastic.
Hargi, you got any questions for our developer friend?
Well, I wasn't there for the beginning, so I'm not sure what you've already asked, right? So
no, we haven't asked any questions, so this is all yours, man. This is all yours.
Yeah. So I assume you're working on Watch Dogs and games like that at Ubisoft. Is that?
I shipped Watch Dogs, but I had left the company shortly afterwards. Okay, so I'm on Team Green, baby.
Okay. So
yeah,
he's Xbox now.
Yes, he got scooped up by Xbox after Watch Dogs
very nice.
Legion shipped, and working on a big budget title that he can't talk about.
Do we know which studio?
It is surely one of the Xbox game studios, right?
It's within the company. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Nice. It's Banjo-Kazooie. Tell us.
Banjo-Kazooie remake.
Tell us.
We need a Conquer before we get a Banjo. We need.
I will let this out of the bag right now. I'm working on a 4K Xbox Series X remaster of Gex the Lizard.
There we go.
That'd be awesome. So
exclusive
I guess,
news here.
From a company perspective, how did you feel about it? I guess you moved over from Ubisoft. Which one was better? Was Microsoft better or Ubisoft better, or are you finding things are changing drastically at Xbox now, and all these acquisitions are happening? And
well, I won't talk too much about the acquisitions, obviously, because I don't want to knock at my door. So, and then the show interrupted. But
nice to come. Yeah.
But no, I think it's great. I think it's really, really cool. I think people are friendly. I mean, it's there's obviously a lot more people that I interact with, on the daily and stuff like that too. So to me, it is a change of pace, but I think that it's a welcome one. And I think that it's an environment that is, how do I say this? Very inclusive, very, very easy to talk to. And I think that everybody is always here to lend an open ear. I don't I don't find myself arguing that much.
Yeah.
Personal opinion. And I don't find myself really butting heads too much in general. So yeah, I think that it's something that I could confidently say that it was a great choice and it was absolutely fantastic. So, and they're very persuasive. So
Yeah, one other
You
question
will work
is,
for us,
sorry,
or
go ahead.
else.
No, like it's simple. Look at Phil Spencer. Look at that man and tell me you don't want him to be your father.
I will say though that Phil Spencer is a fantastic human being. He is wonderful. I think that he, if he can get all of his plans up, I think that what's it called? I think that he's great for the game industry. I cannot root for a better person personally. I think I'm a huge fan of his, and I think he's fantastic. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another question.
What do you think
I
of Jim Ryan?
Oh, sorry.
I don't know. I've never met the man.
We are not going to put this into the time. Go on, Haggard.
Yeah, so one of the things that at least I understand is different between Ubisoft and Microsoft is that there is crunch at Ubisoft. There is not, supposedly at least, at Microsoft. Is that something that substantially is of value to you? Is that something that was a difference to you, or
crunch is a hot debate, and I am very far leaning on the no crunch personal opinion. I think if you're crunching, I think you have a problem with management. I think you have a problem with production scheduling, and I think you have a problem with the employee base. I feel strongly about crunch. This is something that I can bring out my little soapbox and stand up on and speak about forever. And obviously, if you guys haven't seen on Twitter or whatever, and I know that a lot of people haven't over the years, but every now and then, previously in the workplace, I have published my what's it called, my time clocks, my time punches. So obviously, if you guys need to, you guys can DM me on Twitter, and I'll go out and find the tweet, and I'll send them to you. But I was regularly working 76 to 80 hours a week. This is, and you can see the time that I clocked in, 6 a.m., and then you can see the time I clocked out, 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night. And it's like there was no way that I could potentially live like what's it called,
normal life?
A normal life, especially if you are trying to raise a kid or get enough sleep or whatever it may be. Yeah, crunch is just something that again I feel very strongly about, and I think that I don't necessarily liked my time doing it. So
yep. And because Riskit in the chat is gonna ask, like how long does crunch last? Is that like a few weeks? Is that a few months? Is that like a longer time?
So when I had first done it, I had crunched 47 weeks out of the 52 weeks out of the year.
Jesus.
And
that's the horror stories we hear, and it's like, well, that's.
Yep.
I mean, if it was like 3 weeks, okay, I get it, but like.
Yeah. It's a lot of people think that it's just a little bit of overtime. It's just, it's just here and there, which is understandable, right? And who doesn't want to work a little overtime, bring home a little extra money, right? But when you're salary, you don't make any extra money.
Yep.
So if you're working 80 hours a week, I'm whatever it is at Ubisoft, if you're paid $98,000 a year, now I'm making the equivalent of 40. If I'm working 47 out of those 52 weeks, crunch, and we did it. Sometimes we did it on years, and I've heard people do it for 18 months. I've had horror stories where there was an employee that we got snowed in right into the building, and they wouldn't let us go home because they were like, hey, well, you're already here, so might as well work. So I was like, huh? And then we had an employee, because he drove a Camaro and couldn't get through the snow, I offered him a ride home, but he was like, there's no way I'll be able to get back to work the next day. He slept in his car for 3 days.
Wow.
A pair of jeans and a t-shirt and a hoodie. He slept in his car for 3 days, and that was the raw facts. I got to see that with my eyes, and I was like, this is rough. And a lot of people, because the industry is always a revolving door because of this issue, right? And a lot of people are and say they're like, oh, I'm underpaid or whatever. I'm just going to do this because I really want the job and I'm really passionate about the industry. But mind you, if I'm making $98,000 a year, I was expecting everybody else was making the exact same, right? I talked to a QA guy. He's making 28. He's making 32. So now he's crunching the same amount of hours that I'm crunching, and he's making a third of my paycheck. So if he's making 32, at like a 14% tax rate, we can round that up to 15. I mean, he's easily bringing home like 24, 25, So it's like, who wants to work 80 hours a week at essentially McDonald's pay?
Now, would you say, you said 47 out of the 52 weeks were crunch?
Yep.
Would you say that you had to crunch that long because you had to make up for what should have already been done before you came on? Were you playing catch up? Were things pushed off?
We had a delay in the game, as you guys may or may not know. We had a delay in the game about a year, and that was to prep for the next gen consoles. So now we had to ship on 8 different SKUs instead of just 5. So yeah, or 6. So yeah. So it was there was just a lot of revision. Again, I think if you're crunching, you have you're off production scheduling, your management is terrible, and employee base is bad. So it was one of those things where we weren't necessarily playing catch up, but we were also spread way too thin. So anything that was new on the schedule wouldn't necessarily line up with the amount of employees that we have. If we're doing supposedly the work of 200 and we have 50 people in the building, like VFX artists, right? We're weeks behind and we have 6 of them in the building. So how are we supposed to catch up, right? And then they bring work home and stuff like that. Next thing you know, we get a new scheduling in, or we have a new pitch meeting with Eve Gilmont and everybody, or he comes to the studio, right? Because Eve comes to the studio every now and then. So he comes to the studio and says like, hey, do you guys do this? And we shake hands and we show him around what we have, and then he says, hey, this doesn't play very well. I don't like this. Scrap it. So what do? The boss just told us to scrap it. So now we have to start over. And so now the 6 VFX artists that were working on something has to scrap over and start over. And then now we're, again, restarting the production schedule. We're redoing the sprints for the agile workflow. So it's a complete disaster sometimes when things like this don't line up properly.
Like, I think it's quite interesting and important for us to talk about this topic, even though it is just a quick bit that we are doing for this specific topic. But some people that don't necessarily know what crunch means, like, they might think that, okay, a little crunch might be necessary, but they actually understand that as only being overtime. And just look at the example that you gave us. Like, the guy just left in his car for 3 days. Like, is this necessary? God damn it. Makes
Yeah, I
no
mean, like, mind you, we had a warning. We had like a state issue warning. The government issued, the state issued, say, hey, stay home, don't be out on the roads, and that was something that was ignored. And mind you, the warning had came out like the day before, the day of, right? And we had known about this so leading up to a week, and that kind of blatant negligence is something that we have to deal with across the board. So you never really know until you're in there, right? Because you're not going to come to the studio and they're going to say, hey, are you cool with this? Like, nobody's going to say, yeah, I'm going to sign on the dotted line. You know what I mean?
Everyone is a becoming Italian Americans. Hey,
If they advertise that from the beginning, maybe, it's my fault. I get it. I understand. And a lot of people are saying, like, because I've heard all arguments, like, why don't you just quit? Why don't you leave? Well, when your 401k, when your benefits and stuff are tied to your workplace, I can't just get up and leave because I happen to work 40 hours of overtime. You know what I mean? I can't just disappear and leave. You know what I mean? I can't just pop up one day and then move to another area, because I'm never going to get credited for the game, right? So if I left before the game got shipped properly, I never got credited for it. So if I go apply for Insomniac, they say like, hey, we require everybody to ship at least one AAA game. Have you? And I say, yeah, I worked here. And they go, okay, cool. And they scroll through the credits or they email that studio and they say, oh yeah, no, you never worked here. And then what do you do? Or I never got credited for it. Or I did the work, but I never got credited for it. So now it looks doubly worse, on a resume or whatever it may be. So yeah, so there are many issues when it comes to crunch, or like, let's say you're crunching and your senior says, I don't want to crunch, I'm going home. And they say, okay, well, you're getting a performance review at the end of the month. What do you do then?
Exactly.
What do you do? Because they're not telling you what they want to do or what they're gonna do. They're telling you what might happen. So what do you, you just kind of have to shrug it sometimes, and that sucks. And that's just something that we see. I mean, even in the tech industry as well too, and other jobs.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yep.
Palpatine in the chat said maybe there would be less crunch if everyone was paid hourly instead of salary. And you're right, but then we would probably see more game delays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
Well,
so what's
100%.
happening
Yeah, we
is
would have to see more game
well,
delays, and there's again, it's a revolving door. So there's everybody wants to get into the industry, but you can't. Bless 343, but you can't ship a game of that size and magnitude with people who are contract workers. Or you can't ship a game of that size and magnitude with people who only have a year or 2 years of experience. Nothing against me when I first joined the industry, but I don't think I would be able to if I worked with 24 of me, all being under 1 year or whatever of experience, and I said, hey, this needs to happen. I don't think we'd be able to ship that on time, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's just it's a complex issue. You can't just solve it by saying like this is what we're gonna do versus this, and then crunch is gonna magically disappear.
mhm.
for
Okay,
your sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no. It's just a quick joke. Like, I just want to point out that we didn't mention 343 during this entire episode, and I was thinking, okay, finally, the Halo Infinite problems streak of episodes that we've been doing is finally going to end. And then out of the
It
sudden,
will never end until it's like actually like
like,
good, I guess, or
Dali,
whatever. But
Dali, you have no idea. With like,
it's
it's
constant.
been
Yeah.
like
It
6, 7
Uh,
straight episodes in this podcast of us having out of nowhere someone
it
talking about Halo Infinite, and
yeah.
then we are going to discuss for an hour and a half only about that.
I apologize, but yeah, using that as the
Oh
most
no,
recent Stark example, it's hard. It genuinely is hard, you know. But you have bigger issues too. It's like, oh well, why don't you just make them full time? Well, now they have to shell out for benefits, and maybe the studio doesn't
Yes.
want to do that, and it's just a long list of things that we don't actually know what's actually wrong or what's going on because there's so many steps that we don't have the proper information to process everything. It'd be easy to just say convert everybody to full time, but then what if you have issues at the studio? What if you have people who are unfamiliar with the software? Or what about, oh, just give the studio, just give the project to this studio, to id Software, they know how to make first person shooters. Well, what if id has never worked in C++ before? So
Yep.
now their entire studio has to learn something new, and that onboarding process takes
true.
months, whatever. And if they have a proprietary engine, which they do, that could be another mess. So yeah, so it's not as simple
true.
as just a lot of people on the internet, I see on the internet, like this solution will work, this solution will work. It's like it's
Yeah.
never that simple.
Yeah,
But at
exactly.
the end
Right.
of the day, at the end of the day, we can all agree. I don't know, like, you're the expert in this situation. Like, we can all agree that it is all about management issues, huge management issues going on there.
Yeah, I will say this. I'll preface this
Yeah,
always.
no,
If
no,
there's
you
crunch
don't.
going on, then there's 100%. I blame management and production. So
So
But
so
yeah,
from a
it's
oh, sorry, go
Let,
ahead.
let
go ahead. No, go ahead, Hargeek.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask, so like from a cultural shift perspective, right? So you've lived the total crunch and Ubisoft thing, and Microsoft has made an overall stance they're not going to do it. Um, do you see that being championed by Microsoft out to the other publishers and developers, or is that kind of like let it happen organically? Like, would Phil go to Eves and say, why don't you guys try not doing that? And see how it goes for your company and morale, right? And see if it's better. But maybe they have to prove it out, right? And say, hey, we released games. There you go, right? But is that something you think should happen?
yeah, I mean, we're always talking about it, right? I think that the people always, it's not just a championing thing; it's like actually physically doing it.
Yep.
And I think that it's making waves across the industry, and I think COVID has definitely helped push that. So obviously years ago, Microsoft had announced that work from home is now completely legible, and that was an option. across the company. So if you're working on office versus if you're making games, you can work from home. And now we're seeing initiatives at Insomniac where they're opening up studios on the East Coast. They have a studio in Raleigh, where they're saying like, hey, now you can work remotely in this area now because now you're able to connect with us. You're not too terribly far away. And Bungie is able to open up, work from home, in my home state, Virginia, and they're able to open up in Texas and in California and other things. So you definitely are seeing it move across the industry. So it's just taking some time because not everybody is going to just transition from working from home, right? There's something concrete and palpable when it comes to physically working with somebody. Hargeet, if I need something from you and I just walk over to your cubicle and I said, hey, I don't know if you're loaded or not, but could you do this? And you go, you know what? Here, I want to write it on a sticky note and paste it here, versus emailing. If I send you an email, you're probably gonna be like, oh, what does Dai want? You know what I mean? This is the 15th email this week, whereas like
now,
yeah, or you go to other companies, and this was something that is definitely a hard adjustment, a no email culture, right? So no emails, so you don't get any on the weekends, so that means like if something's not done, we wait until Monday to do it. Yep. And you don't know that kind of stuff until I walk in on Monday or whatever it may be. So that's something that, is also in the plans, is also being championed, is also being pushed as well too. But every workplace, every studio is always different. It has different needs and different wants and different, stuff that needs to be met. So having a no email culture is fantastic. And then you go work at Insomniac, and then now you have people, or you work at Ubisoft, right, where we have 22,000 employees across the world. Having a no email culture doesn't work there. So now you're like, oh, snap. This is a totally different work environment, right? Now you're getting emailed from somebody from Ubisoft Shanghai, at 4 a.m. They're like, hey, I need this, or Ubisoft Kiev, or, Red Storm Studios down over there in North Carolina. You get emailed from there. Or Ubisoft San Francisco, is over there. And they're like, hey, we need your help, Dai. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What do you guys need help on? Different time zones and everything like that. Whereas like somewhere like Microsoft is definitely very not stagnant, but it definitely has its audience base, not audience base. What am I saying? It has its employee install base that's very specific. So if there needs to something that needs to happen, this person is on the West Coast that can make that happen. So that right there that works in a no email culture because, whatever it may be, or emails can get processed on Monday or whatever it may be. If I need it tabbed up or a ticket can be opened, and then the proper person can be able to respond to that. But something like Ubisoft, that kind of culture and stuff doesn't necessarily work. So yeah, I think it's being championed, and I think that it's being pushed properly, and I think that people it's gonna pick up, and we're gonna see that. So yeah.
Now, I do have a question, and this pertains to maybe not so much now, but back during COVID, when everybody was being had to work from home, the work that was trying to be done at home, were you having to do that on what you would consider not really a work class PC, where you may not have the capabilities that you would have if you were in your cubicle? Or did you have the option to bring that home and do it that way?
I unfortunately could not bring things home, right? So there are a lot of issues, right? So in the studio, we have dev kits, and if you guys didn't know, dev kits, there's a dev kit and then there's a debug kit, and you have to pay each one, right? So there's like a dev kit, which we see that stuff, then that's where all the information is displayed, and then now you got to process that on the debug kit to be able to kind of make use of that information, know exactly what's going on. This door is not interacting with that door. This is off its hinge, blah, 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 X and Y. Each kit costs about $4,500. So let's just round that up to $5,000. So each kit, it's $5,000. So if I'm working on 8 different SKUs, you can imagine how big my desk looks. At home, I can't just take that stuff and be like, hey guys, I'm taking it home. So it's so my computer that I specifically have at home that I'm on right now is built specifically for this kind of thing. It's like it's like a response to that. So I have a 2950X Threadripper 16 core 32 thread, and then I have a 3090 as well too. And then prior to the 3090, I had 2 Titan X's in SLI. And that was, again, that was a direct response to what I needed to do at home versus what I needed to do in the office.
But not everybody had that luxury.
No, not everybody has $5,000 to spend.
It's not even the money. There was.
I don't know about you guys.
So you couldn't even buy machines if you wanted to.
Basically, I mean, you couldn't, like as much as everybody has, as much as I want to just go out and buy an NVIDIA DGX to be able to work on whatever it is, to interact with somebody, in Ubisoft Shanghai, like that's not feasible to me. That's $65,000. You know what I mean? Yep. That's something that a studio expense, or that's something that like Ubisoft can expend. That's something I can't expend out of my pocket. Yeah. That's $65,000 instant. That's $65,000 is not something that I'm gonna, or that $65,000 is something I'm going to see instantly. It's not something that I'm going to see over a course of period of time. There's no real dividend to that, because I'm spending that money to keep my job.
True. And like those dev kits, they're supposed to, at least that I understand, they're supposed to actually be kind of limited access, and you have to tell people who can see it, who can access it, right? So
So I can't upload. Problem. It's not like I can just upload that information to Dropbox. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's there are pros and cons to being in an office versus not being in one.
Yeah. So, I mean, since you brought it up, I guess the other question I'd have is, did you find that you had extra delays because of it, because of COVID?
Yes.
And all the headaches. And
yes. For the first 6 months of COVID, I don't think we did anything.
Okay, so essentially just dead.
Dead air. Yeah, because how do you transition not a studio, but how do you transition a company that large, 22,000 employees across the world? How do you do it? Everybody has different COVID guidelines, right?
Yep.
So, my sister studios, my friends and other developers, my sister studios, they were dead in the tracks too for 6 months. I know a lot of the Assassin's Creed teams were like, well, we got to make it work. And then 4 months down the road, they're like, I don't know what to do.
I guess Max 380 in the chat is wanting to know if, like you said, you built that PC in response to the needs to be working from home. Were you reimbursed for any of that because it was used for work?
No.
Ooh.
No, not at all. So
wow.
Yeah. That's why I say, like, not everybody has $5,000 to spend. You can't just go out and
talking about
to buy that,
There's a colleague who's making what, 30 something, right?
If somebody's making $32,000 a year, do you think that somebody's going to be like, aha,
Yeah, I can drop $5,000 on a PC. Nope.
And Thember would like to know which Ubisoft studios you worked at.
Montreal and San Francisco.
Ah, there you go, Thember.
So kind of international.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
Well, yeah. So I got a question about level design.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your cup of tea. So
yeah, that's my expertise.
The game we're seeing, Watch Dogs Legions, one of the things that it was highly touted about was that it was, I guess it was advertised as almost being a London simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it more of a representing London, or is it actually like laid out exactly like London is? And how much photogrammetry went into this game? And so people, we were talking in chat, and you were like, people think photogrammetry is you just take it and plug it, and it's not like that at all. Can you go into that a little bit, both as what this game was supposed to be, representing London, and what goes into photogrammetry?
Yeah. So here, give me a second. Let me pull up some tools and stuff like that, because there's actually photogrammetry stuff that is, what's it called? That I had talked about like not too terribly long ago. But yes, as for the actual game, I would say that it is pretty damn close to a simulation. Obviously, there are things that we didn't expect to happen that happened, which is Big Ben. If you guys didn't know, that's copyrighted, so you can't make a one-to-one replica of that. So that replica in the game is not 1-to-1, it's like 1-to-95 or whatever it may be, you know. So it's like a 95% scale or a 93% scale, because now you have to fit into like legal terms of like what's technically a simulation, what's technically a replica. Same thing with in Assassin's Creed, like that church that got burnt down, and they used our photogrammetry scans to be able to rebuild that church. That's something that you know, there was a huge problem back then about making that 1-to-1, because they didn't want to make sure that, you know, it's used properly or this or that X and Y. So yeah, Big Ben is copyrighted. I think even the sound is copyrighted. So in the game it's pitched and tuned differently, and in the game it's actually not as tall as it would normally be. So yeah, it's weird things like that we run into that not necessarily everybody is going to see or understand. But yeah, I would say that it's pretty faithful to London. Some of the stuff that I've seen, some of the stuff that I've worked on, I would say that it's pretty 1-to-1, as much as it could be anyways. So a lot of people, Londonites, would walk around the game, and I've gotten plenty of DMs and comments and stuff, I mean, like praising it. It's like, oh, this looks exactly like Baker Street, or this looks exactly like, you know, what's it called? Wilmington, and this looks exactly like, you know, this or that. This looks exactly like, you know, the First Tower. It's like, it's pretty exciting.
So I did notice one thing. So I played about 5 hours of this game over the last few days that I edited and took out a bunch of.
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to high places. Look who's in the chat right now.
Oh,
look at that.
There we go. We're officially on the top tier of YouTube.
Yeah, you know, you've made it big time when you get the porn spam. Yep, we're there.
Yep.
So,
Jesus,
you just so I just totally lost my whole train. Okay, so about 5 hours of this while I was that I edited down and took out pauses here and stuff that was just dead space. And I guess I was kind of curious about so what graphics engine is this actually on? Because I did notice the clarity when you're driving it out. You can't take my gameplay as gospel here, because I'm still playing around with bit rates, and when things get moving, things get blurry, and I apologize for that. But in game, this game is very clear and it's very sharp, and no matter how fast you're going down the road, signs that are on the wall and all the writing and the graffiti and everything, none of it ever blurs out, and it's always as sharp as it can be. And it's unique to see a game engine that does that as quickly as this game seems to do that. And I was just curious what game engine it's running on. Is this
we use our own in-house engine. It's called the Disrupt engine.
Well, it looks nice.
Thank you. It's designed specifically to handle like wind simulations and other things that impact that kind of stuff. So like that blackout stuff that you see inside the game, that's something that's couldn't necessarily be easily recreated in something like Unreal Engine 5 or anything like that, because there are specific tools that we use that kind of trigger that kind of stuff. So running around and seeing your phone connect to everybody's stuff and being able to dig through their dirty laundry basically, or being able to see a camera in the distance and hook onto that so quickly and have that camera transition move so quickly to that's stuff that we've built inside the engine and baked inside the engine itself. So that's something that is proprietary to us. And so yeah, that's not something.
Does it honestly rain this much in London?
Yes,
because everywhere you go, you never go down a road in this game where there is not a puddle.
It's have you ever been to Seattle?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, I really can't compare it to anything in the States, but yeah, I would say it's raining like 8 days out of the week, with the chance of rain for 5 of those days.
I mean, you start to get the feeling that they did this on purpose just to show off screen space reflections. you get that feeling because they're everywhere. When it's sunny out, there's puddles.
Yeah, of course. We have to show off that tech, but no, it is raining like that. We wanted to make it realistic as possible and make sure that it's again, a faithful replica and a wonderful simulation of London. So yeah, it's unfortunate to hear it is actually raining like that all the time.
Like Bob, come on, you were part of a podcast with three guys from the UK. Are you seriously asking the question? You could ask Dan, you could ask Ash, Gina, Redders. They would answer, no worries.
Oh, I wasn't playing this back then.
Oh,
I was still.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was still afraid I was going to lose game data because I had a couple friends who lost like there was that bug, that glitch where people were losing like 14 hours of gameplay where their save files were getting corrupt in this game after it launched, and I was actually afraid to play it because I didn't want to lose that.
To answer your second question, for photogrammetry, so you need something like a tool. You need a specific tool. You can get one on the internet. It's called an X-Rite color checker passport. And I don't know how much they go for at the moment right now. They probably go for like $150, $200 or something like that. You can get more expensive ones, but this is like the easiest one you can do. And you can do this kind of stuff at home. So you need to take a bunch of photos. Obviously, you need high res photos. I'm not talking about photos with your phones. You need something that you can zoom in and accurately see detail and stuff. So we're looking at something like 45, 50 megapixels. I mean, these photos are gigantic. They're like, hundreds of megabytes a piece, that kind of deal. So you need like hundreds of those photos in a 360 view. So we were able to break that kind of stuff down. And then you import them into something called Agisoft Metashape. And I'm not going to teach you guys how to do that because it's a whole different thing, but you basically import the photos, make depth maps, and then you build meshes on that. And then once you do that, you import that into a retopology program, and we do UVing inside of ZBrush. So this one simple photo, or this Big Ben, is now I have to take photos, and then now I have to go, okay, now I have to use like 6 different programs to be able to make sure that this is properly interacting with our engine properly. So now you do UVs, and then you have to re-UV them to make sure that you reduce the number of polygons, because you can't just import a 500 megabyte or a gig model of Big Ben into the game, because then the game would be 200 gigs. Nobody wants a 200 gig game, right? So now you kind of have to make sure the polygons are kind of just, you're making a fine line between shippable and playable, right? So now if you're driving by Big Ben if you're walking by Big Ben and it's playing at 60 FPS, and then you're driving by Big Ben and now it's playing at 12 FPS, now we have a problem. So that's why we kind of just adjust that as things go. You need 3 things. You need a shadow scale map, you need an illumination map, and then you need shadow marks for any time of day. So you need those specific 3 things. And then once you prep that, you retopologize it, and then you make the new UVs, you make a base color texture that matches the new mesh, and then you bake it in. Some game designers like to not bake it in. I personally like to bake it in, just so that way I can create like a normal and a roughness. So that way, like if things are raining or things are snowing or whatever it may be, if you transport into the future and Big Ben is knocked over, you're able to kind of see those changes progressively, right? So you can use the same model, so you don't have to constantly swap things out and say like, oh, now this is Big Ben when it's sunny, this is Big Ben when it's rainy, this is Big Ben when it's snowy, this is Big Ben when it's cloudy, because then again, the game would be way too large. So now all of this process you're able to kind of use to make sure that Big Ben is, you just have really 1 or 2 assets for that kind of stuff. And then after that baking starts, or right before that baking starts, we open our meshes in Maya. So now you have ZBrush, Maya, and a couple others, and Agisoft Metasoft, and then Agisoft Delighter. So now you have 4 programs specifically for one asset, by the way. And then you got to make sure that you bake in certain meshes so that they're 1-to-1. So when I drop them into the engine, the shadow map or whatever, the textures aren't shooting off all the way to the left, because their placement is completely different. Their coordinate placement is completely different from whatever the current asset is. So then after that, you make sure that it's high poly enough to be nice and noticeable, like you complimented. It's like, it's super awesome, it's super crisp, it's super clear, but also low poly enough to be able to make sure that it loads fast enough, right? Because as you notice in our game, our load screen, there's really not a lot of pop-ins, and there's not a lot of loading issues with the actual game when it comes to starting the actual game. And then of course, once we do all of that, you bake the base color texture to the new meshes and its UVs, and then you run X normal for that. So that's the fifth program that you use, and then you use the sixth program called Alchemist to delight it, and that doesn't take into the account to the mesh shape. So once you do that, that's six programs that now you have to use, and then once you do that, you import it into the engine, and that's how you use photogrammetry, and that passes several different hands. So it could be me, it could be 12 other people. So it's not something that one person is dedicated to 24/7. But yeah, a lot of people think that using photo scans is like a one-stop shop, like, oh, just use photo scans of the real world, and then they don't realize like how difficult it actually is to run photo scans and stuff like that. So now one person like me has to sit and what's it called? Now one person like me has to sit and sift through dozens of photos and do this process a dozen or more times to make sure that it's properly implemented. So yeah, photogrammetry, that's kind of like the base breakdown of like how that works.
And Turn 10 and Playground Games made that look easy.
Oh, they make it look like, oh yeah, we just took photos of the sky and then we dropped the sky in the game. It's like,
Yeah, so,
like
we
that game, yeah.
We just flew over Mexico 100 times, and here you go. Here's Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah, and so like obviously that game has paid off because you look how beautiful that game is when you're driving around at high speeds and at low speeds. It's actual magic how they managed to make that game work with that amount of data. So yeah, I'm impressed, genuinely.
All right, you guys ready to get into another topic? This is a quick one.
You sure?
Yeah,
Should we?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Do you all know what is happening Friday?
What's happening Friday?
Friday, there is going to be a 14th anniversary live stream of Dead Space.
Okay. Nice.
Yes,
Nice.
yes.
Okay, like we need to see that space remake gameplay going
Oh,
on there.
perfect. They're doing an extended walkthrough of the game just for you, Fabio. They heard your cries, man. They were like,
Yes.
we're gonna make sure that this man is satisfied.
It does say celebrate 14 years of Dead Space featuring an extended gameplay walkthrough.
There we go. There we go. It seems like as if I knew this before I just made the comment. Like it's just amazing, how,
Right?
like I don't know, it's just so spontaneous how things go.
Oh,
Ah, Jesus.
yeah.
But but yeah, how excited are we for that space remake? Let's be
I mean,
honest.
if it's true to form, very excited because Dead Space was a
What do you
great game.
mean true to form? Be
It's gonna
honest.
add some. It's gonna add some things, and I'm excited for the new content. To be honest with you, I'm excited to see how they redo some of the levels and that 360-degree zero G stuff. That's something that that plagued the first game. So yeah, I think that it would be kind of cool to revisit things and with a new lens, because obviously, if you don't play the game 24/7, the original anyways, if you don't play the game 24/7, a lot of stuff there's some rose tinted glasses being put on, right? But going back and physically playing the game, you're like, man, this thing is dated. This thing is rough. This thing is hard to play sometimes. So yeah.
Could we actually say this, that Dead Space the original is rough to play? Seriously? What? Okay, I'm surprised. Okay, I'm sorry, because I honestly think that Dead Space is a game that it's like Bioshock, the first
Mhm.
Bioshock.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
play that again, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna enjoy it. Sure, you will find something here and there that you don't like. Yes, I'm talking about those damn mini games to hack the vending machines in Bioshock. Those were stupid, but like
They were
those were
just,
stupid. Like
tell us exactly how you feel, Fabio. Oh,
but and of course you are going to find some elements like that in the original Dead Space. But I don't know. I think it survives well the time. Like
Hmm.
I think it's a game that it's not necessary. You cannot say that, to me at least, that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is rough. And I think it's just amazing how we define a certain genre, or not necessarily
Mhm.
saying that that space is the great 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 grandfather of this specific game, but it's like I can draw a line from this recent release game, horror game, to that space, and make the connection, say that that space made part of the development of this game. It's just like Half-Life with Valorant.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there
I mean,
definitely is a lot of things that Dead Space is doing. And obviously, when I say in rough shape or dated, I don't mean like it's unplayable. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that there are
Yeah.
a lot of gameplay decisions that I'm like, oh, we haven't seen this in a long time. You know?
Hmm.
And in Bioshock the same way, hacking mini games. It's like, man, we haven't seen this many mini games crammed into a game in quite some time. You know,
Hmm.
if you look at some
yeah.
of the newer stuff that's come out, it's like now you have the option to skip mini games. Now you have the option. You know, some of these mini games are kind of tiny. I mean, I'm thankful that Watch Dogs Legion has as many puzzle elements as it does, you know,
Hmm.
or just Watch Dogs in general has as many puzzle elements as it does versus other open world games. I mean, you don't see this kind of amount of puzzles really tied into the narrative is hard. And maybe that itself, maybe I will be saying the same thing 20 years from now. This is dated. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that Dead Space 1, it's definitely showing its age though. So I'm
For
not gonna
sure.
say that it isn't.
Yeah, yeah, like it's just like Banjo Kazooie. I think the game is just perfect, but of course it is aging.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
That's a
And
fact.
Banjo Kazooie, he could just keep
Kanjui,
aging.
Banjo
I,
Kanjui is that I don't
I
know this.
always I've always had a problem. That's why I always change the subject to conquer because I can say conquer. It's Banjo Kazooie.
You don't even know how to say the name of the game.
You could
Like
just say banjo. We're good.
It gets me
Make it
tongue
easy
tied
on
every
you.
time I try to say it.
Kazooie is such a hard word for you to
Kazooie.
say right now.
Kazooie.
Kazooie, Kazooie.
Kazooie.
What's the problem with Banjo? What's the deal with it?
I just let Banjo be Banjo the way Banjo is. I don't need a new one. No,
Of course we need.
no, we don't.
This man
Okay,
has no
Says
idea
they
what he's
need one
talking
more.
about.
okay, I have to bring it up, otherwise Thimber's going to have a conniption fit. Everybody, today is the 25th anniversary of Fallout.
Yay.
It's the 25th anniversary of Fallout. He wants to talk about Fallout.
Okay, I watched the video that Bethesda released, and I think it's amazing the fact that they call the original developers, where one is the head of Obsidian Studios and the other is the head of In Exile X Studios, and all of them
Right?
are in the family of Xbox. I think it's just so crazy, in my opinion.
All right, we done talked
I'm
about
excited for
Fallout now.
Fallout. I'm excited for the new stuff that's coming out. I'm excited for Outer Worlds too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just Fallout's great. I love it, and
Yeah, like, I
I'm
think it,
pumped for Starfield.
like
Yes.
I think it's quite amazing how Fallout is not necessarily Fallout 1 and 2, but especially Fallout 3 and New Vegas are those type of games that, in my opinion, they define a certain type of genre. Because look at how Outer Worlds is.
Mhm.
You play that game, you think this is Fallout. Look at how Starfield gameplay was shown to us. You look at that and you think, this is Fallout. So I think it's quite interesting how they are. I'm not saying that they are reusing assets, but I think it's quite interesting of how powerful a good franchise and a good and beloved franchise can be for future games, because people are now, even though they are the ones who made the game, people are now going to be trying to redo the same thing to catch that success. I think it's quite interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, Fallout 4 was my favorite. No, I take it back.
Fallout
Fallout
Three
3
is
was
my
No,
favorite.
Fallout 3 was my
no,
favorite.
what?
Ooh,
Not New
ooh.
Vegas?
New
Really?
Vegas is not my
I
favorite.
like
You know. I put out a tweet. I put out a tweet today that you guys may have seen that was very controversial. I said the Outer Worlds greater than New Vegas, and I got a lot of flack for it. But you know, I got a lot of people who agree with me. Um,
Those people can do it.
New Vegas. It's okay. I personally I like Fallout 3 a little bit more.
Okay, probably.
You couldn't play Caravan in Outer Worlds though.
You can't, but you have a more compelling companion system.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got them there.
Shit.
All right,
And
we wouldn't be
the perk system for Fallout 3, personal opinion, is much better than in New Vegas. New Vegas definitely tried to put a roadblock in and try to slow things down. When it came to progression, I think that to me, skills and perks in Fallout 3 is much more attuned to giving you the freedom to be whoever you want to be and create your character how you want to create things versus New Vegas, which is a
I
little
think
bit slower.
I think it depends. I think it's because New Vegas is a game that tries to, as much as possible, be an RPG.
Mhm.
In my opinion, while the other Fallout's, if we ignore one and two, the other Fallout's always tries to make something more not as restrictive as an RPG game where you have a certain build and you have limited perks and you need to use them so you can follow that specific build and you have to study to know what you're going to do, just like a tabletop RPG. Simple as that. And like for example, look how that changed also in Fallout 4.
Mhm.
You can actually get all the damn perks. And like you are not necessarily who do you want to be? Okay, I'm going to be a god because I got all the skills here. Just like in
And
Skyrim. That's a fact.
And to be fair, on the Outer Worlds' part, mind you, though, obviously in the M City and Umbrella as well too, the Outer Worlds is much more compelling when it comes to dialogue and actually having that matter inside the game. Right, being a smooth talking space cowboy is much more effective because now you actually have things that can impact the actual gunplay when it comes to putting points into these kinds of skills, something that you hadn't seen, something you hadn't seen before, right? Which means that those kind of minute details means that you don't necessarily run into every single encounter and have to be good at what you do. These skills matter, and the dialogue options matter in Outer Worlds, which to me put it above just a hair in New Vegas. And I don't want to, when I say that Outer Worlds is better than New Vegas, I'm not saying that New Vegas is a 1 and Outer Worlds is a 10. And a lot of people assume that kind of stuff. To me, New Vegas is dated. It's showing its age, and it runs horrifically on the PC without mouse smoothing and other mods. It is what it is. But it's a product of its time. And when it comes to that kind of gameplay, I think that Fallout New Vegas is about a good 7. And Outer Worlds is a lesser in scope kind of game, but because it's tighter and it has a little bit more cohesion with the narrative and the actual gunplay, the companions, and then the skill group matching. It, to me, feels like a more complete game, and it feels a more cohesive game. And to me, that I would award that something like an 8 out of 10. And to me, I had more fun with Outer Worlds, though I won't ever forget New Vegas's Beyond Meat mission, which I think is absolutely hilarious. I love that mission so much; it's burned into my memory. It's definitely one of the best times I've had playing a Western RPG.
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about two games that are made by the same studio because
Uh,
a lot of
yeah.
people credit New Vegas being as good as it was because it was Obsidian and not Bethesda.
I don't necessarily think so. I think that it is because of the story, because Obsidian really knows how to tell a good story. That's a fact, and not necessarily just a main story, but secondary stories. When you look at the factions, how complex it is, for you to decide which faction are you going to help in the wastelands of New Vegas, you think, Jesus Christ, this is hard. You don't know who to choose. Am I going to choose the guys that wanna try to resurrect the old soul of America but are corrupt? Or am I going to support the guy that tries to make a who is like Caesar, who is like a Caesar and it is oppressive and has a dictatorship but brings order to the thing?
Yeah. To be frank with you, I agree with that sentiment that Obsidian New Vegas is as good and amazing as it is because of Obsidian. That talent, that writing team, Josh Sawyer and team, like those guys, the way they bounce back and forth between each other. I mean, if you guys ever met them or if you guys will ever meet them, it's like their kind of comedy, their kind of writing, their way they craft their game, their mission structures, their writing, their comedy. It's just so organic and cool and
Yes.
fun. And that's something that you didn't have at Bethesda, right? And I think that New Vegas is a shining example of when you stick by your writing so well, you realize that like one or two people are making this game versus, you know, it passing hands between editors and stuff like that. This New Vegas has a very palpable feel to it from start to end throughout every single faction. Everything feels as if it's one person or one or two people, and everything feels like it's deliberate in its writing, whether it is this interaction versus that interaction, whether it be the world, the lore, and everything like that. It doesn't feel like it's made by two different teams or eight different people, or it doesn't feel like it's being written by somebody who is living on the other side of the world that is culturally different, or living in an area that has different kind of slang and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that, again, I credit New Vegas to a lot of it to Obsidian and its core team.
Yes, but especially the writing. In my opinion, when it comes to writing, the best, like, if we were to say, what could it be the game with the best story ever? I say you make a game and you bring the writing team from New Vegas to work together with the writing team from BioShock 1. And there you go. That's your answer.
I mean, that ignores Mass Effect.
Ooh, Mass Effect's a good one too. That's a great that is a franchise with undeniable staying power.
Which
Mass Effect and Fallout or
I don't
in
care.
BioShock.
Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, and like 1 introduces you to this whole world, and you're like, what the heck? Oh, this is so good. And then 2 just takes it to another level. And 3, the only downside to 3 was the stupid ending. But
yes,
other than that, oh, dude,
Yeah.
they're so good. They're so good.
yes.
I had a question for you along those lines, right? So you did the photogrammetry thing and how much work it is. I'm finding that games take forever to make now, and I think that's basically because we've made them into this. They have to have some visual fidelity level that, like, so just take Mass Effect, right? We got all 3 of those games in the 360 gen, right? That's just never going to happen now, right? Because like games take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Starfield's going to take 8 years to make. 8 years, right? Like in that same 360 gen, Todd Howard put out 3 games. That's never going to happen again. Like, are you finding that like good or bad? Do you find that it's good that we're pushing the fidelity, or do you find it frustrating to say I can't get my game out?
I would say that it's kind of frustrating because, well, being in this environment, this is the only product cycle that I know. So, 5 years, that's me. But we managed to make ours in tandem with Watch Dogs 2. So about 3 to 4 years of development, right? So that's still going pretty, with a 1 year delay, that's still pretty close to 5 years. Yep. Whereas old school 360 gen era, which I personally believe is the best generation we've had so far,
I agree.
Is the output is astronomical. The reason why is because production cycles are on 18 months, which produced some crazy stuff, which produced a lot of different things and a lot of variety, and it also produced a lot of wild things when it came to game studios and people being in that stuff. I've heard a lot of horror stories about the amount of stuff that they had to cut and stuff like that in that 18-month cycle. But that 18th month cycle was something that that production cycle, like this was the finite time that we had, so we had to get it done. So it was do or die inside those studios. So to me, when I find those moments, those kind of moments of peril, you make the decisions that mean the most to you. Whereas now it's like, oh, we can delay it. Oh, now it's like, we'll see how things go down the road. Now we can employ 500 extra people. 15 years ago we couldn't. They didn't, right? The guy who was doing narrative design is the same guy who was writing it. The guy who's doing level design is the same guy who was coding it. So it's like that kind of dark age of video game development is like there was just a lot of cohesion inside the studio because you knew there was only one VFX guy. They knew there was only one narrative designer. So anything that was added or had to be done pass through that person. Now it's passing through, the team that I work with was like 20 some people, right? So the level that I designed could be completely different once Josh and Tim get their hands on it, right? And then they spin it back to me, and it's like it's a whole new different level. So now it's like, oh, this is all I have to work with.
Start looking up Josh and Tim right now. We got to find out what game they're working on.
So yeah, it's one of those things that that's in the 360 era. It's the amount of output was something because of that production, that time constraint, that production cycle, which we've seen in the past. Horror story wise, I've heard that it was both good and bad. They were good and bad. But yeah, this new age of like having to make things look proper, because at the end of the day, graphics sell. Back then, gaming was such a hardcore crowd. You didn't really necessarily have a casual gamer. That was something that didn't exist, right? Games, like, people knew, like, we got bullied for playing games. Come on now, guys. You know what I mean? It was hard for me to go to school and be like, oh yeah, the new Call of Duty game. Now everybody's playing Call of Duty. Everybody's playing Fortnite. I got bullied
more for playing Dungeons and Dragons than I did games.
And now you see it's got worldwide popularity, and you're like, what?
Yeah, what? Right? What?
You did your time.
What they don't the know Big Bang Theory. What are they made Dungeons and Dragons a big deal in a television show? What?
Yeah, it's totally different now. So when you have that kind of stuff, and now you look at the global gaming audience, now it's 68% of it is casual gamers. So we can round that to 70, right? 70% of gamers are casual. You cannot deny what games are coming out that are appealing to that kind of market. It is just an undeniable fact, right? And it is what it is. It's hard. It's a hard truth. And when you have companies at the top saying like, hey, you have to do this. We push this because of X and Y. We do this because the statistics and the metrics reflect this. I mean, a lot of the reason why we're seeing so many remasters now is because AAA game development is so freaking expensive, right? So now they have an IP that they're like, we haven't made our money back yet. So you know what we're doing? Push a remaster, because they have to get their money back. And it's, when a game costs $500 million to make, or, our game is like $80 million to make, that's not a small price. Games used to be made for like 20 million. Games used to be made for like 10 million. Games used to be 8 gigs. Skyrim is like 12 gigs, not even. You know what I mean? It could fit on a pen drive. And now we have games that are over 100 gigs. I mean, look at Warzone. It's one big map, and you're like, oh, how big can that game be? And that's 200 gigs. The campaign is only 12 gigs. So you're like, oh, wow, 4-hour experience is 12 gigs, whereas a whole game like Skyrim, endless amount of content, 100 hours, used to fit on a pen drive, 8 to 10 gigs. So it's like you can definitely see where the industry is moving when it comes to mass global appeal. And it's hard to deny it, and it's hard to see it. But at the same time, I like the fact that we're taking time to make these games. I'm divided, honestly, because obviously, as a developer, we want more time to make the game that we want, right? We don't want to be crunched and have time constraints, because things get cut, right? Things get cut all the time. You always hear about that. Oh, this got cut. Well, we didn't have time for it. DLC didn't come out on time. We didn't have time for it. I mean, look at, across the industry, look at, Anthem. Oh, we didn't know what we were doing for 2 months, or we didn't know what we were doing for 2 years. And then we popped the E3 demo because we made that in 6 weeks. And then now we have to make a whole game in 12 months. Then you look at the game and you're like, this is it. The same 12 months, the same 12 to 18 months that we used to have 15 years ago is not the same that we have now, because gamers, the casual gamer base, is so keen on getting sold within the first 5 minutes, right? Yeah. And then you have that kind of creativity that goes out the door. Look at Pentiment. This is the biggest example of it. Look at Pentiment. They showed that off. Josh Schroyer showed that off, and the first thing that people did was clown on it. And it's like, dude, this is the game that he wanted to make. This is a game that they wanted to make. And then the first initial reaction is, this is it. It's hard. It is hard. It is very hard to kind of accept that kind of stuff. But it's just where we're, that kind of direction that we're moving. So there's a fine line we have to tread, and publishers and large gaming companies like Ubisoft, I mean, they're businesses. They're not soup kitchens, right? Yep. So as much as we want to make games like Pentiment and Jet Set Radio, Banjo-Kazooie, games that like that we all love,
minus Bob, is
there really an alley for it like there used to be? So yeah, So that's why we have things like Fortnite. And bless Fortnite. I love it. Bless Fortnite. They are doing wonders in Roblox and Minecraft and all of that kind of stuff. But as a gamer, that's just not what I want to see. That's not what I want to play. I want to play Ragnarok. I want to play Starfield. I want to play games that make me feel and transport me to different worlds. And then it's just not how it was. The landscape is different.
I want to play games that back up the feeling of playing with 2022 hardware. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want that experience.
Yeah, and then you have Halo Infinite, and then you realize that maybe the arena shooter is not thriving like it used to be 20 years ago. So now what do you do when you look at those metrics? Halo, mind you, Halo is a massive property. So like they can definitely survive this kind of fumble. But if this was a smaller franchise, like I don't know, like Bloodborne, right? If you're introducing something like Bloodborne, that's already super niche, and then you have a launch like that, it's like you're not getting greenlit for a sequel. So you have to really genuinely play it safe. And it's, it's where we're headed. It's what we're doing. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. And it's definitely something that you have to be cognizant of moving forward, because, you're like, why are these games coming out like this? Why are indie games booming right now? Well, because they've been in the oven for the last 5 years, and now Unreal Engine 5 is free. You know what I mean? So the skill floor is non-existent. That barrier of entry is non-existent, but the skill ceiling is still very high. But you have to.
That's another question I
make
have
returns.
Is, people assume that UE5 is coming and UE5 is going to make game development easier, and I hesitate on that because I understand it'll be for indies, right? Because they'll take stock assets. But when it comes to AAA developers, they're going to say, well, no, I got to make my version of that, and it's got to look as good as the stuff the indies are putting out or better, right? So I feel it's going to take even more time, because that's what seems to always happen. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, Unreal Engine 5 and Unity and those kinds of stuff, like that just gets rid of the barrier of entry. That gets rid of like the fee, right? Because when I started game development and doing indie dev and self-taught, Unreal Engine was $20 a month. That's what it was. If you guys knew that, if you guys didn't know that, and then you had to pay like $100 pass to be able to publish whatever you wanted to publish, right? So now that's out the gate, $120 that I'm out for the first month, and then every month after that was $20, and that kept things at a minimum, because that really kept things to people who knew what they were doing. Oh, this is C++. I know C++. Boom, done. Now Unreal Engine is free. You can download it. You and I, everybody can play with it. Use mega scans and stuff like that. And now you can kind of create stuff that you could do in a weekend that people that were doing 10 years ago took months to create. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the graphics capability, the knowledge, or the hardware even. We talked about this earlier. Hardware even to be able to make something like, GTA 5. It just means that you could, and you could do it for free. But yeah, when you're utilizing that kind of stuff and utilizing a specific engine, regardless if it's free or not, you still have to make it your own. So I don't necessarily fault any of these developers for making their mark on things, or like even CDPR, right? Where they transitioned to UE5 and they said, hey, Epic Games, we're going to help implement tools specifically for the game for open world design, so that you guys can kind of implement that into the engine. So they're taking a loss on proprietary tech so that they can spend time and cut time from development by not making proprietary tech. So it's like there's a trade-off there. So now 10 years from now, everybody will have access to the stuff that CDPR implemented in The Witcher 4 on Unreal Engine 5 because of CDPR.
Yeah.
But that also means that skill ceiling goes up one more notch. So now Harjeet, me, and Fabio are sitting together at a lunch table like, dude, did you guys see Witcher 4? Dude, we got a blank check from Microsoft. It's not looking up to par with our competitors. So now Phil Spencer comes walking through the door and says, can you make this a little bit better? And your studio head goes, yeah, we can do that, Phil. And they shake hands. And then he walks out the door, and then that guy turns around, looks at you guys and us sitting at the lunch table, like, all right, well, get to work, boys. And now we have to make it look better, because somebody else said so, or because the audience demands it. So yeah, it's I think it's still going to make development times just as long, if not longer, using Unreal Engine 5.
Yeah,
You heard it here first. Microsoft is working on an action RPG open world.
With us
Okay,
three, yeah.
you heard it first. Microsoft is competing with The Witcher 4, but here's the catch: Microsoft is buying CD Projekt Red. That's it. It's official.
right.
So,
Totally
um,
confirmed. Totally confirmed.
Gosh.
And we
All
are the
right.
only employees that they are going to be having.
Last topic. I wouldn't make the claim to talk about the news, the latest news on this show, if I didn't bring up what happened today. And that is the UK CMA has publicly stated their issues with the Activision Blizzard acquisition. And what's funny is with the Brazilian CMA, they basically beat around the bush. They did mention Sony's name once, but they beat around the bush and said it's our job to protect the consumer from the competitors and not the competitors from each other, which I think is that's right. That's you should the consumer should come first. The UK CMA today really seemed like they went out of their way to just blatantly say that this is going to weaken competition for Sony. I mean, they stated Sony several times, and it's like, it doesn't sound to me like you're on the consumer side. It sounds to me like you're on the competitor side. And then Microsoft had a lot of rebuttals about that. I'm sure everybody's seen it. If you haven't, you're living on a rock. So, I don't want to draw this out too much longer. But what do you all think? I mean, short and sweet. Everybody's opinion.
short and sweet. Hey guys, I gotta answer the door real quick. I'll be right back.
No worries. No worries, of course. We'll wait for him till he comes back. No one's gonna
Dun,
say a
dun,
thing.
dun,
No one's
dun,
gonna say a
dun,
thing about
Yeah, I
this.
was
We are
wondering
going
if
to
you can
wait for
actually
him.
talk, right? Because it's
Of course, he cannot talk about this. So we are going to say our opinions on that.
Yep.
Hardy,
Okay.
go on, please.
all right. So look, I wouldn't read that much into it right now. Okay, like there's a little tussle
Uh,
back and forth.
wait,
Fair enough.
wait a second. Wait a second, Hardy. Let me just point out this to anyone that is watching this. This is all opinions from gamers. Okay, that it
Right.
has
The
nothing to
game
do.
developer has left the room. It's not
Exactly.
his opinion.
Mr.
Yeah,
Daly, Mr. Dai does not agree with anything that we say here in
yeah,
this topic,
yeah.
and
This
we
dude, you can't.
are not going to talk, and we are not talking on behalf of him. Okay, this is our opinion, Fabio's, Hargit, and Bob's
All right.
opinion
Well,
on this topic. Okay, nice.
okay.
Come on,
Go.
So anyway, so so yeah, so basically,
fuck son.
even Cade, right? They started in the same thing, and they went to their second phase, and then did the analysis and figured out, yeah, Sony still has a pretty significant market share. I think it's like 60-40 in Brazil, in favor of PlayStation. So like we don't need to protect for PlayStation. This is one IP, it's one game, whatever. So the same thing's eventually going to come out in the other ones. They may have some issue with it, but we'll see. I think the issues they're looking at more are not this generation, but going forward, and then what happens with the new attack, right? So, and I think that's where things are going to become interesting with cloud, with Game Pass. Is that going to be a sticking point? And what would they say to that? Cloud is so nascent, is right in the beginning of it actually being anything. So are they really going to be able to do anything with that? And then Game Pass, I mean, like there already are subscription services out there. So
Exactly.
is it really um, impossible for somebody else to compete with that? I mean, look, Sony can if they want to, but I think the whole model is going to start shifting at some point because of the availability of cloud. So we'll see how that goes in the long run. But the idea that we're always going to have closed ecosystems of Nintendo, Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation and Epic Store, like those are probably not going to be the pattern in 15 years, right? But we don't know, right? Because disruptors happen, right? And normally when we were having things before Sony came in, it was disruptions all the time, right? So we had Atari
Mhm.
and ColecoVision and television, and then Nintendo, and then Sega came along, and we had NEC TurboGrafx, and on and on and on, right? We had so many different players, and Sony came in and wiped everybody out, right? And so then we've had like the Nintendo that came back, and then Xbox entered, and that's kind of where we've been, right? And we don't know if that's going to change. So it's very hard for them to like make predictions in the that in 10 years it'd be impossible for anybody to compete because you still have Apple, you still have Amazon. Google could finally say, "Oh, hey, we want to get into this." They could do it. Meta's trying to get into gaming, right? So you have all these companies that could compete. We just don't know, right? EA has a subscription service already, and their games go in day and
Yes.
date if you pay for the highest tier, right? Ubisoft, same thing. They have Ubisoft Plus. You can pay for the high tier, and you can get every game day and date. So it's not like it's unheard of. It happens. It's out there, right? People can do it if they want.
And
So
it's not necessarily a business model that people are like, this is very risky. We can lose a lot of money. This can fail miserably. Like, just look at all of those servers. They are still live. They are
they're
still
there
well.
exactly,
They're
right?
still here. So why can't Sony try to do something like
And it
that?
doesn't. They don't even have to, right? If Sony has their different model, that's fair enough, right? It's just a question of
Okay,
is Game Pass in and of itself with ABK going to paralyze the industry? Well, I just
no.
don't see that. I just don't see that because look, you still have Embracer. What if they decide to do it? Right? Embracer has so many IPs, so much, right? They could do that, and they could say, "Hey, we're charging $20 a month. You can have access to all our games," right? So there's a counterfoil to anything that Microsoft does right now. If
Or
Microsoft
like,
got to 50%, I would have problems. You're right at that point, right? If they got to 30%, I'd have problems. They're going to be at like 10%. Like it's just not that big a deal. I just don't see it, right?
I
And
mean,
they're going to
like,
get to that realization. So this is just the first part. The second part is when they finally do the full analysis. They'll finally start. Now the response from Microsoft was, well, interesting to say the least. I don't know that I would have gone as nasty, but
hmm,
maybe that was the right play, right? Their lawyers are way smarter than me, right? So hopefully that was the right play. But I just think it's kind of in the beginning phases of phase two. Don't read that much into it. I think it's going to end up very similar to the Brazilian Cade result. They're going to
yep,
realize, hey, so PlayStation had an 80% market share, but with PlayStation 4, and now it's 60-40 with PlayStation 5. They're the big leader here. They're the one with the huge market share in our country.
exactly.
We should want the competition. We shouldn't be protecting Sony. We should be protecting the gamer. They may still have something that they come up with and say, "Hey, Microsoft, do these few things, and then we're good to go." Right? But we don't know what those would be. Well, we'll see. I think they're looking at not the immediate 4 or 5 years. They're looking beyond that to see what potential issues could come up. Right? And it's
Like,
fine. Let them go through the analysis.
I think it's interesting that that you wanted to bring up embrace a group and Tencent here to the discussion, Hargit,
Yeah.
because of the fact that, like, I think that people are not necessarily bothered by those companies because they don't make consoles at the moment.
Yeah.
So what happens if they say, we got so many studios, we got so many IPs, we own so much thing, why don't we try to make a console and make all of those things exclusive to that? So what happens then? Are we now
Yeah, I
going
mean
to,
it's possible, right? It's possible. I don't know where platforms are going to end up. My gut says that we won't have as many like console like platforms in 10 to 15 years, but we'll
exactly,
see, right?
exactly, for sure. And I think that, like, again, we're talking about a company that it doesn't matter if Xbox is going to acquire Activision Blizzard, Sony is still going to be the number one gaming
Hmm.
company at the moment, of
No,
course.
Nintendo is
Or
the number one
Nintendo,
gaming
right?
company.
Which we
Seriously,
always ignore,
Nintendo is
or
the number
Nintendo.
one? Seriously?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that, sorry.
In
And
console
Nintendo
sales.
hasn't had a Call of Duty in several years.
Yeah, in console sales,
Yes.
Nintendo
Okay,
beat
interesting.
everybody. Yeah.
Interesting. Second, Microsoft already said, guys, Call of Duty is still going to be available on PlayStation. And I do not believe it's going to be the thing that Jim Ryan said, that they offer us only for 2 3 years. That's not good enough. This is, you are mistreating our players. No, I think that 2 3 years that Phil Spencer might have said was about the exclusive PlayStation deals. That can,
Was
okay,
Well, it
this
was 2 years of current marketing and then 3 years of
exactly,
so it's 5
exactly. I
years,
don't
which is a
exactly.
good
It's not
offer.
necessarily, yeah.
But
It's not
well,
necessarily, it's not saying
you
that
got
after this you are not going to have anything from Call of Duty on PlayStation. Like Jesus Christ, that would be insane. Like it makes no
my
well,
sense.
right,
conspiracies are different on that, but go ahead.
but what? So what they're worried about is, so we already know like Warzone is free to play,
Yes.
right? But there, you have people, a lot of people that enjoy that campaign experience,
Okay.
and they're afraid of the seesaw being shifted and people migrating to Xbox, because on Xbox after the acquisition they'll get that campaign experience for free with Game Pass.
And
It may still be on PlayStation, but you will have to pay for it on PlayStation.
hmm
You won't have to pay
well,
for the multiplayer, but you will have to pay for that campaign experience that you will get with Game Pass. And that
well,
is the lopsided shift they're worried about, I believe.
well. I would love to play as Spider-Man on my Xbox, but I can't. Right? I have to buy a PlayStation so I can buy the game and buy the DLC on PlayStation so I can play Spider-Man. Right?
This is right.
Am I able to play Wolverine on Xbox? No, right?
No, it doesn't
Am
If
look
I?
like it. No.
Microsoft were able to actually make a deal, yes, right? Because if Sony
And
wants
like, and
certain
like, and wait a
stipulations,
second. And wait a
fair
second. Just,
enough.
like,
Bring
and
the games.
here's the thing, Hargit. And why, even though I'm bothered that I cannot play as Spider-Man or as Wolverine on my Xbox, and I have to actually buy a PlayStation 5 to play as those characters, I'm still not bothered saying bad things or trying to destroy Sony anyway. Why? Because Sony bought Insomniac. They own the company, they can do whatever they want, and they have to deal with the characters. That's their property. Okay, nice. So, if Xbox is buying Activision Blizzard, why the hell wouldn't they be? What? Why would they need permission to put Call of Duty on Game Pass?
I mean,
I mean, they
that's
don't
it.
need permission. It's just that that's what
No,
Jim
no,
Ryan's
yeah,
afraid
no,
of,
no.
and
Here's the
I
thing.
and I
Here's the
get it.
thing.
But
Here's the thing. So here's the thing. They don't need permission. Exactly. But Jim Ryan said you need my permission to do that, even though the company is going to be yours and you can do whatever you want with it. That like I might be saying a lot of bullshit right now, but that's the interpretation that I'm having, and like this is getting way too far for like it's just an acquisition that okay, guys, were you that afraid when Bethesda got acquired by Xbox?
I
Because
thought they'd be more
Bethesda,
worried about the Bethesda deal. I
because like
mean,
Bethesda games are available for free on Game Pass, but you have to pay full price on or deal price on PlayStation. And are we all having a big discussion about this acquisition? No, right? So
no.
like,
I know.
okay, Bob, your turn. What do you think about this situation? Dali, you don't say anything about it. We already made it very clear that all of this entire discussion is only is all Fabio's, Hargit, and Bob's opinions. Okay, you have nothing to do with it.
Uh, yeah. I don't know. So we know that Jim Ryan was and Sony they were preaching to Brazil about how this is going to be bad for gamers. They said for gamers, it's bad for gamers. And then they took the same spiel to the UK. This is bad for gamers. And now Brazil has done their second investigation. They've come out and said, "Oh, doesn't bother gamers whatsoever. It may crinkle your underpants a little bit, but we're not
Yes,
here to protect you."
of course
And
it's not gonna.
hopefully, after the in-depth investigation, the UK will find the same thing.
Like, of course, it's not going to bother Brazilian gamers because the prices here are really high. The fact that I can play all of those games for only 45 Brazilian reais in comparison to buying one game for 350 Brazilian reais is madness. Like, why? How is that not going to favor the gamer?
All right, I'm done, guys. You ready to get out of
Yes,
here?
yes, I think we can. Yeah, I think we're good to go.
All right, it was a great episode, everybody. Everybody in the chat, thanks for showing
Daddy,
up.
if you don't
Bushido, you
talk.
were here in the chat. You were here in spirit. Go down the rundown here. Fabio, where can people find you?
Well, boys, my Twitter is here on the screen. Actually, thank you for the new layout. Loved. You can find me there on the Twitter on the screen as well as the gamertag Buffon Lizard 8 on Xbox. And you can find me working and hopefully being more active on in live streams as well as in podcast episodes on my podcast, the XBL Party Podcast.
And Hargeet Chani, where can people find you at, sir?
Yeah, so check us out. Our website's gameondaily.com, and our YouTube is youtube.com/gameondaily. And I am H Johnny on Discord and Xbox, so check me out there.
And to our guest, Agent Deli,
Thank you so
where
much
can
for
people
having me
find you?
on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You guys can best find me on twitter.com/agent deli. That's mostly where my daily thoughts go and games that I'm playing, stuff that I'm doing. My opinions. You are more than welcome to interact with me. I love it. I love all the interaction. So yeah, ask me about, I don't know, my favorite game, how the weather's doing. I don't care. Just, feel free to tweet at me as much as you want, DM me, whatever it may be. Ask me as many questions as you want or as little as you want. That's the best way to reach me.
Later we'll discuss about that Watch Dogs Legion codes that you told me, okay? But
Hey,
just
I will send you a physical copy.
Oh goodness. And I'm your host, KY Bob. Everything's on screen. My Twitter, uh, Xbox, PC, PlayStation. Catch me every Wednesday at 9 p.m. hosting this great show, living that grind. And it was great to see everybody, and it was great to be seen. Tell a buddy or two, and have a great weekend. Good night, everybody.
good night everyone.
Bye.